Hello, welcome to the outside. You're with Tim Merry and
Tuesday Ryan Hart here.
nice. So we have had a recurring theme coming up in many of the leaders we're engaging with, in a tension between the kind of crisis response and the urgency, and the kind of need to maintain a long-term view and a systemic approach to how change happens, and trying to like navigate between those two poles as we go through the period of the coronavirus outbreak. And so we just wanted to like do a little teaser on that and kind of set up our blog that's coming out this week.
Yeah. So part of what we're hearing is, of course, because of COVID, there's a need to respond right now. Will people come into the office? In most places, no, at this point. Actually, in all of our clients' cases, I think it's a no at this point. If they're not coming in the office, how are they equipped to still work remotely? Things that are quite practical, like do people actually have laptops or computers they can use, right? Like, so really practical things, needing these leaders' attention. How do they make decisions? What are they going to cut back on? What are they going to move forward in this time, right? So lots of like, we need to make this kind of decision today. Lots of budget implications, right? One of our clients,
money's being reallocated like right in front of them. They're seeing budgets disappear, move around, right?
Absolutely. And so these are things that need to be responded to right now. And of course, our work is longer term systemic change. And so it begs the question, what is the place of that particular work in this time of crisis? And so that's really what our clients are coming to us and asking about and thinking about with us. How do we absolutely respond to what is right in front of us and yet not lose this long-term view? Because there's a reason they got into long-term change work. Right? Often their organizations may not have been fit for purpose, or they weren't delivering in the way that they wanted to, right? So those things don't go away because we have a crisis. And so really trying to imagine what is this way forward that holds both of these pieces, because we cannot ignore what's happening today. We have to respond to what's here. And we only respond to what's here at our peril in the long term. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen long term, but some attention to that bigger view still needs to be held.
One of the interesting things I think that's been coming up, Choose, has been a question around, well, wait a minute, isn't this an amazing opportunity to learn, right? Let's insert evaluators as we go and like take the opportunity of the crisis as it is and learn. And we can learn and we can gather patterns and we can understand in more depth about the kind of the cracks in the system that made us want to engage in this work early on. And I think one of the things we've learned is like, that's actually not a very good idea. That there's actually an enormous amount going on, and then adding in an extra layer on top of that to people who are already kind of like stressed and working under enormous pressure. That's just like an overwhelm. That's not a good response right now as people who are trying to hold the long-term view. And so there's going to be a point at which we can learn, right? And there's going to be a point at which the opportunity of these circumstances can feed into the bigger picture of strategically where we might choose to go. But it's actually too early on to start diving into those types of conversations. Does that match your experience as well?
Yeah, I was thinking about also just the sensitivity around people, like people's lives, like, people are dying, there's lives at stake. And so this idea around like, well, let's learn from this. And of course, I think I want to say people are learning all the time. It's just a matter of capturing that learning and where that happens and how that happens. And also, for us, even with the long-term view, not getting so caught, one of our colleagues, Brona Gallagher, just has done a really good job and not actually even thinking, oh, when this is over, we'll resume what we were doing, right? Because the world will be a different place. The folks we're working with will likely be quite exhausted. They'll be thinking about systemic work in a different way because they will have learned about their system in a different way. Some of the experiments they've been running may not be valid or relevant in any way kind of post-COVID. And so just this idea of, even as we hold the crisis in the long term might really shift, right? And so we have to still be open to that emerging and iterating and wanting to just let people have the bandwidth they have, right? So many of us, especially in this long-term work, you know, we're looking, clients are pushing off work. They're saying, you know, we'll do it this fall. And so, you know, that has its own impact on us, right? What does that mean for our businesses? What does this mean for our particular work and how we'll make our livelihoods? And I think that the impulse can be like, oh no, long-term work is still important. You got to really stay in it. And that is true. And like, how do we continue to meet people where we are? One of the things that we've been talking about in one of our projects is, well, you know, it looks like we're going to have some real limited activity. That looks like what's going to happen kind of in the short term. And is there a way from what we've learned in working with this organization for 18 months that we can be useful in what is now? It may not be what we've said this particular effort or initiative is in the organization, but if there are things we've learned, if there are skills we have, can we actually make those available to the people who are responding to crisis now? And so in some ways, just being flexible, just being responsive, just looking at what's ahead of us, but keeping both views.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a kind of a dual reaction in our worlds. One which is like, just give us the chance to focus on the urgency. We're not losing the long term. We're going to come back to that on the other side of this. And it may fundamentally change or rewrite what we do or what we focus on, right? And that's kind of one response. Another response is kind of, all right, we actually need to continue with some of this work. How can you redesign what you're delivering? Bless you. So redesign or what you're doing so it fits the reality of COVID-19 and the coronavirus outbreak, right? I think Tuesday, I think that your sneeze just shattered the internet. I think it just shattered the internet. You're completely frozen. Okay, great. So it seems like people are having, you know, one of two responses, at least that I'm seeing, and I'll be interested to hear yours. And so one is this like, pause, we're going to learn, right? On the other side of this, once we've gathered our wits a bit, and in some ways they're going to have to have restored their energy, some of these people, because they're doing frontline response, you know, that is then going to inform and radically change kind of like how we move forward on our systemic efforts. It may mean some of the things we'd agreed with to you, you know, months ago may completely change, right? So I think that's one piece. And there's another piece, which is like, we need you to redesign how you're working with us in the face of the coronavirus outbreak. So like, what does it mean to be gathering people globally in a long-term way online? What does it mean, instead of the online being the thing that sustains our face-to-face gatherings, how actually are we sustaining ourselves purely through online, you know, knowing that face-to-face gatherings may be few and far between?
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think, and so on one level, we've got pause, and on the other level, we're scrambling like complete nutters, trying to figure out a completely new business model and a completely new way of delivering kind of like highly participatory, highly equitable, highly strategic process design towards significant change, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah, and so our clients are figuring that out as well. You know, what is this new landscape mean for them in terms of crisis response and in terms of their long-term systemic view? And so we hope you'll join. The podcast next week is actually featuring one of those clients.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So we just wanted to kind of say a little bit, you know, you'll hear a little bit about the work in NYC, and this podcast was recorded before COVID-19. So they had no kind of sense of what was coming, but we wanted to put it out because we think it's amazing work that they're doing and will do on the other side of that. Also because these are our friends in New York. And, you know, we know that this is one of the epicenters. And so we're just really holding these folks who I think we respect and really like working with, but also just have a lot of care for and have concern for as they're in this place that is suffering so much at this moment. And so they will be on our podcast next week, and we hope you'll give them a listen. And again, it won't be about COVID, it will be about the work. And that work will look different after this, but it felt good to let their voices out kind of in this particular moment.
Oh, I love that. And it's going to be the operating team. So these are the folks who've been kind of like coordinating and organizing and kind of like right out front leading this change effort. So it's a really lovely, like intimate look into what it takes to like get this kind of change done. And there'll be a link in the show notes to an interview that was done with some of the senior leaders of that organization as well. So if you're interested, you'll be able to get a quite broad view of kind of like how that effort has moved over the last 18 months. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Take care, folks. Cheers. Bye-bye.